All right, cool. So what I had planned today is outlining a rhetorical analysis essay. So how that's going to work, functionally speaking, is that we'll, kind of start off with an introduction of what the outline should be, and then getting into how to specifically write the essay. So first of all, follow Fiveable on all of our social media, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So in today's stream, I highly recommend you get on your computer. Hopefully, Perla, you're on your computer now. And basically what we're going to do is I'm going to talk to you about how we can effectively outline, and then we'll get into some practice prompts and go through a Q&A, and basically try and answer y'all's questions about rhetorical analysis while also talking about, the different ways that we can answer these questions. So I'm going to look at these. I think I'm going to answer these questions first because they aren't really related with the thesis. So I'm going to start with Sierra's question. How would you suggest keeping the thesis explicit enough, but not painfully obvious? So what I think the best way is first you want to put it in a place that your AP reader can clearly see. And usually for me, and for most, I think AP teachers encourage you to put your thesis at the end of your introduction paragraph. I know some teachers that teach where you only write your thesis for your intro paragraph. It's honestly up to you. So I think your thesis can be explicit by just answering the prompt. Read the prompt and then read your thesis. And if they sound the same, then it's not explicit enough. So you really want to be answering the prompt, and that means including your own analysis. That means telling the audience how exactly how did the writer use those devices to contribute to what message, right? What is their message? What is their purpose? And that's how you can make your thesis very explicit, at least in my opinion. Anika asked, do you have any tips for writing the thesis and coming up with the examples? Oh, that's a good one. And actually today we're going to be doing that kind of practice. So what I would encourage you to do is to look at the prompt, look at the article, find some rhetorical devices, and kind of figure out what the author is trying to get at. So what their purpose is and what their message is. And that's how you can write an effective thesis. And we'll go through some as we go today. And I get that's pretty slow for you. That's okay. I think that's what the outlining process is also for. Do you mention the rhetorical devices the author uses in the thesis statement? I did. I think it's a personal preference. Some people didn't. Some people did. And so because of that, I think the best case scenario is just do what you've been doing in your regular classes. I know some teachers say you should say something like, the author uses rhetorical devices, including but not limited to XYZ. Some people just say use rhetorical devices. I don't think it matters either way in terms of getting the thesis point, as long as you are specifying how the author used those devices to contribute to their message or to their purpose. I hope that makes sense, Nikki. Ida asks, is it bad to repeat the same claim or thesis, but in different words throughout the essay to analyze the evidence? Yes and no, because repeating is bad, but repeating to analyze the evidence is, I think, detrimental, but I think is beneficial is linking the evidence and the commentary to the thesis. So the best way to analyze evidence and to analyze rhetorical devices as a whole, yeah, and I agree with Catherine there. I think restating the thesis at the end of the essay and at the beginning of the essay kind of, it almost makes like a layer cake. It makes it taste very good. It makes your essay seem kind of wrapped very well. But I think repeating your thesis in every body paragraph is not necessarily the best idea. I think restating it in different words and linking your evidence and your commentary back to your thesis is a better way to do that. And I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, you can ask another question in this Ask a Question box and I'll clarify. Do you have any tips for time management? Ida, that's a great question. I would say, we're going to go through this in just a bit, but typically I like to spend about 10 minutes on outlining and about 30 minutes on actually writing the book, 35 minutes on the essay. And we'll go through that because Nearpod has this great feature where you can set a timer. So once again, if you aren't on a computer, for all 25 of you who are here, I would highly encourage you to get on a computer for our live practice today. Cool. So now let's get through the actual content. It's not very long, I promise. So the first thing is, whenever you're outlining your rhetorical analysis essay, if College Board continues to stick with that AP classroom format, there might not be space for you to do so. So I'd recommend that, you take out some sheets of paper, maybe notebook paper. It's all up to you. And Anna, I'm going to give the code in just a bit. I just don't want y'all to join too early because that might lead to some technical issues on that front too. So I'll tell y'all in like 10 minutes. So the first thing is to annotate and know what's important. And that's what the next few slides are actually going to cover. But also knowing the rhetorical situation, the writer, the purpose, the audience, context, message, and exigence. Most of that, as Perla mentioned earlier, is going to actually be in that paragraph above the prompt. They usually give context there. And you can usually figure out their purpose and their message by reading through their prompt. Remember, exigence is the motivation, the urgency. Why did the author write the text? What caused them to, start writing down things? And so that's something that you also kind of figure out as you read through the prompt. Also, writing a defensible thesis is really, really important. And so as I mentioned earlier, explaining how the devices leads the author to achieve their purpose of X or their message of Y, that's how you write that defensible thesis, something that you can back up with evidence. Also, look for some important figurative devices and ask yourself and write in your essay, why did the author use those devices and how does it contribute to their purpose? So I would say that after the first read, you should really start annotating different things on your paper and then putting them in your outline. And I would say that there is no format, no template for an outline. Do what your AP Lang teachers have told you to do. Is that why fiction isn't rhetorical analysis? Because the exigence is harder to find. Perla, that's a great question. I would say, yeah, I think with nonfiction, it's just so much easier to figure out why the author wrote the text and the context during that time period. Because with fiction also, it's very hard to delineate who their audience is. You can't really do rhetorical analysis in the traditional AP Lang sense because the audience of a fiction reader is different from the audience of a nonfiction reader, things like that. So in terms of annotations, I would look throughout your text for syntax, diction, imagery, rhetorical devices and techniques, which we're going to go through later, and different appeals, emotion, authority, and logic. Those often come up in those kinds of speeches that you'll see. And annotate, remember, means like taking notes, not just like underlining or highlighting. So unfortunately, because the AP exam is not online this year, it means that you probably won't be able to write on the screen. At least that's been my experience in AP Lit. On AP Classroom. So if that's the case, once again, I encourage you to use paper and, jot down notes, which lines has which devices, maybe write down quotes with specific devices or techniques. And also, don't worry, College Board will give us a test run of the system. I think if not next week, definitely the week after, because there's 3 weeks till the exam, if I remember correctly. So don't worry, don't freak out. It's going to be okay. I promise. So I saw earlier, and I didn't get to address this. Anika said, I don't think you can get a 5 without sophistication, though. I think the answer to that is really twofold. The first is, like Catherine said, we don't know how many points on the rubric will be needed. I would probably say that a 5 or up will get you 5 out of 6 points will get you get a 5. Once again, that's pure speculation, but College Board has said that there is no limit on the number of scores. And so that means that, oh, that's good. Thank you for letting me know, Catherine, that you can print the prompt. No cut and paste. Yeah, that makes sense. Where was I? Basically, what's really, really important and what's really great about this year is that it's not scored on a bell curve. So even for classes like calculus, for physics, for biology, it's not only 20% of the people can get 5s, right? It's not like a classic curve system. This year, there is no kind of amount. There's not a set number of 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. There's no okay, this is where we draw the line, if that makes any sense. So it means that this year it's okay maybe to feel a little worried in advance, but once again, with good practice, you'll be able to do well. So once again, like I encourage y'all, I sent out this poll earlier, but I'm not going to poll y'all now. I'm just going to ask you to answer in the chat. Which of y'all went on community.fiveable.me and answered the AP Lang prompt? It was about Queen Elizabeth, I believe. Okay, I see Sierra did it. I just want to gauge how many people did. Oh, that's really good. It's not too late, Anna. Just get it done tonight, please, because that's when that's my hard stop in terms of responses. All right. No, that's okay. I sent them out in an email from last week's stream, and maybe that got lost in translation. So let me see if I can send a link to the rhetorical analysis prompt. After this stream, I'd highly recommend you go check it out. I think it's a pretty valuable resource. I'll be grading the 10 plus people who have answered on the 1-4-1 scale, and hopefully that will give you all some good feedback there. So just get it done tonight. Otherwise, I won't be able to look at it just because I have a insane week in terms of preparing for different AP exams. Perla, that's up to, I think you can edit your post. So just edit it and then add it at the end. That works. Cool. So a technique that I really like to use is IDA for annotations and for outlines. It's a 3-step process. It's starting off with the identification, which means finding the rhetorical devices that are to some extent, present throughout the essay. Decide just means, does it, help the author's purpose? And at this point, it's also good to decide whether or not it's a complexity or a tension. And finally, you'll analyze. And so what that means is you'll explain 2 things. First is, how did the device link to the author's purpose and their message? And second, why did the author use the device? And oftentimes those 2 go very hand in hand. And I think that sets you up for success in the whole idea of like more commentary than evidence. But remember, quality over quantity. So you want to be very careful with, what you end up writing. Cool. Are there any questions so far from anybody about anything that I've covered so far, about annotations, about outlining? Let me know. We got a question here. Do you think we should organize our paragraphs based on rhetorical strategies or devices, or chronologically? Ida, I was taught to do it chronologically, but do it how you've been writing your essays, because you don't want to change something up. Like, you don't want to be uncomfortable on the day of the exam and be like, oh, should I do this or should I do this? Just do whatever you've been doing previously, and I think it'll just work out better for you. So it's up to you. If you haven't written rhetorical analysis essays that much, my advice is chronological. I just think it flows better. It helps the AP grader kind of understand where you're at, but I know different teachers have different philosophies in terms of like how you should organize rhetorical analysis essays. So once again, it's up to you. Sebastian, I saw you said that, is it bad I only started preparing for the exam now? Honestly, I didn't start preparing for the AP Lang exam until early May, and it's never too late to start. So I'm very glad that you're starting now. Answer the rhetorical analysis prompt, come to the next 4 streams, and I assure you, you will be able to be successful on your AP exams. Because honestly, the AP Lang exam is not that difficult in comparison to, the crazy amounts of content that you have to learn for calculus, biology, physics, statistics, or even like the histories, right? So for this exam, as long as you practice, I think you have a very good shot of doing well. I got a 5, Perla. Great question. Cool. So let's also look at some different rhetorical techniques. So basically, thanks everybody. Really appreciate it. Y'all are so nice. And at a lot of schools, by the way, you will get AP credit for 3 or above. So that means that even for this exam, you don't have to write the best essay in the world. It's okay to make some mistakes. But I think the way that we mitigate those mistakes from happening on I'm forgetting the date. I think it's May 23rd. No, it's 23 days left. But the way that we mitigate May 20th, thank you. The way we prevent that kind of like, oh, I'm so stressed, is by doing that practice beforehand, setting the 45-minute timer and working hard to basically ease, I can't even speak English today, ease your nerves. So this slide basically talks about rhetorical techniques. So that's, the diction, imagery, details, language, and syntax. Something I mentioned multiple times throughout multiple streams is that you should never say something like the author uses details or the author uses diction, because that's just really vague. Remember, every nonfiction prompt will have diction. Every nonfiction prompt will have details. Add adjectives, whether that's nostalgic, whether that's heartwarming, I don't know. Like you definitely need to be very specific in a rhetorical analysis, and especially whenever you're linking to the author's purpose or their message. So Sebastian, I'm not saying you say something in place of diction. I'm saying you say something before diction. The author uses vivid diction. They use dramatic diction. They use some kind of emotion, adjective, something like that, because otherwise it just, I think it kind of adds to the sense of your writing being not very sophisticated. I'm not talking about the sophistication point. I'm just saying the author uses diction whenever they explain this and this, just doesn't tell a lot about what that actual like quote is talking about. So by adding that adjective, by adding description to diction or imagery or details, it just makes the AP grader's life easier and it makes your sentence much more specific. Yeah. All right. So in terms of rhetorical devices, I'm not going to go through all of these. And I think down here, the slides are linked for outlining rhetorical analysis essay. So you can definitely go check those out in terms of the different devices that that you have. I'd highly encourage you to use the ones that you're most comfortable with, because I think most of these are commonplace, but there are other ones like chiasmus and antimetabole, like stuff that I even don't really know as a student in AP literature, which I probably should. But I think sentimental diction works. Matthew, that's a good question. And yeah, Perla, got to study before those Olympics. And I'm actually going to quickly interrupt this really quickly. I'm going to say y'all should definitely go check out the Fiveable Olympics. And what that basically is that we are offering a number of prizes, whether that's like, we don't know, I can't exactly say what the prizes are, but there's technology, gift cards, cash. Those are all possibly on the table. And so if you sign up with this link, which I'm going to paste in the chat here, you can essentially earn points, whether that's as a team of 4, whether that's as a class, and then eventually if you earn the most amount of points as an individual, as a team of 4, or as a class, at that point, you're able to win prizes and stuff. So if you watch replays, read guides, participate in our hypertyper beta, which hopefully some of y'all have looked at, those are all opportunities for you to, yes, and you can participate individually, Carol. Okay, I'm going to answer some of these questions. Which ones are the most common? I would say that most passages have some appeal, emotion, logic, and sometimes credibility, like appeals to authority. How do we keep track of how many points? Amani, once Fiveable Olympics launches, then you'll be able to see how many points you've had. Otherwise, I would keep checking your email. Also, I think simile and metaphor often comes up, but that's not too difficult to identify. That just means, looking for like or as whenever comparing or things like that. Symbolism oftentimes shows up, although that's, I think that happens more so in fiction than nonfiction. But I think the really good ones that I didn't talk about here are things like tone shifts, things like, vivid diction, figurative language, syntax, things like that, like sentence structure. Those are all different ways that we can, look at rhetorical devices. I hope that answers your question. Okay, cool. So let's look at outlines. I'm not sure how to differentiate between symbolism and metaphor. That's a great question. Oh, I did not record my TikTok. Shoot, definitely need to do that. How many rhetorical devices should we have? Mitha, I'm sorry for butchering your name there. It depends. I know some teachers encourage 2 devices per paragraph, and then you can have 2 or 3 paragraphs. So that's 6 devices total. Some people do 1 device per paragraph. Do what you're most comfortable with. If you haven't written an essay, I would encourage you probably to do something around the lines of 1 to 2 devices per paragraph that kind of lend themselves to the same link to the author's purpose or their message. I personally did 2 per paragraph, and I had 2 to 3 body paragraphs. So I would have upwards of 4 to 6 devices. I know some people write literally with 3 devices. I would always tell you that you should write how many body paragraphs should we do for a 5. You can have 1 body paragraph. You can have 2, 3. I don't think it matters as long as your commentary and your evidence is specific and lends itself to successful analysis. And I think Miss Catherine Malone said this in like an earlier stream that like, honestly, what matters more is quality, not quantity. What you don't want is like a bunch of devices and no link to the broad thesis, to the big picture, things like that. I think it's more important that you have more like developed, I'm like forgetting the word here, but like concentrated, that's it. Concentrated analysis in devices more so than, having spread out devices all around the passage. I hope that makes sense. Ida, earlier I saw that you said you didn't know how to differentiate between symbolism and metaphor. I would say that a metaphor is something it's much more explicit. It's like the phone is the rotten apple to you, or something. That's like a really terrible example. But like whenever we look at symbols, it's much symbolism. It's much more like implicit, right? You'll see something like a beating heart, or like the telltale heart, or the raven. Those things are more so like it's not a specific comparison. It's not this is this, right? Symbolism you often have to interpret. Metaphor is given to you. I hope that makes sense. We have a question here. What's the difference between the significance or relevance and the purpose? It's a great question. I think relevance and significance touches more on the context and the exigence. Why did the author write? What's their motivation? What caused them to write it? And what was the time period context at the time that led this like speech or this passage to be important? Whereas purpose is, what are they trying to do? What are they trying to get the audience to do, right? So significance or relevance is the impact. It's what's surrounding the text, whereas purpose is what they're trying to explicitly do. So when I talk about here on this outline slide that you need to mention why did the author use the device, which is sort of like purpose? How does it contribute to their purpose or message, and tying to significance or relevance? This is a place where you can start, inching towards the sophistication point. And once again, I agree with that. Like, you definitely shouldn't be spending a bunch of time on sophistication when you should be definitely focusing more on getting 3 or 4 evidence and commentary points. Those are just much more important. But honestly, to me, I think including context or significance and relevance, pointing out complexities or tensions, that's not extraordinarily difficult. And if it's something that you have time for, I highly suggest trying to earn sophistication. For those of you who weren't here last week, I highly encourage you to check out the replay for our live stream on rhetorical analysis sophistication. I think most of you in today's stream were here last week, so thank you all for showing up and participating with me live. But as a quick review, remember what we talked about with sophistication is really 2 categories. The first is what I simplified as SOC, or significance of choices. And honestly, I might prefer ROC, which is like the relevance and the significance of how exactly does the author's rhetorical choices tie in to the exigence, tie into the purpose, tie into kind of the setting. The second category I talked about is POC, or purpose of complexities. So that's when the author deliberately includes things like contradictions or tensions, or kind of like a shift in personality or a contradicting personality. And at that point, that's where you could talk about it in the body paragraphs, link to the author's purpose. Do you think POC for tone is common and easy to do? My response is I think it's a lot easier with something like AP literature, where you're looking at prose analysis and you're looking at a character and how they have like a different, like a contrasting tone. But I think oftentimes, like we saw for last year's prompt, if you saw one of the samples, there was one student writer who talked about how Gandhi used this forceful yet polite tone. And that's where he started earning that sophistication point, because he started talking about complexities within kind of the tone and the manner that Gandhi was communicating. And that's something that you can find. I think it's something that will work out. So I think what I had planned next was practice. So basically, I'm going to give you all 3 prompts, and all we're going to do is basically answer. We're going to look at a prompt, and I'm going to post it here. I'm going to post the Nearpod code right now, actually. So if you've never used Nearpod before, just go to nearpod.com/join. I'm going to see if I can copy this link, or you can just go ahead straight to this link here. How it's going to work today is we're going to start each prompt. And what we're going to do, it's going to have like kind of a description of what you want to write in your outline. And then from there, you'll have 10 minutes to write like a quick outline of your essay. So that includes things like intro, body paragraphs, and conclusion, with just remaining time for proofreading. This here is talking about what I would do on the actual AP exam, which is spend 10 minutes outlining and 35 minutes writing. So 10 minutes for the intro and the conclusion, 25 minutes for body paragraphs. And I think because the AP exam is letting you time yourself, it's a lot easier to pursue this strategy. If you guys have been told by your AP Lang teachers different like time strategies, send them in the chat, because I'd love to hear about them. This is something I kind of just came up with off the top of my head. Okay. So do you recommend using axis or peel, axes or peel for evidence. Matthew, I haven't heard of that before, so I can't necessarily tell you if that's good to use as evidence. If it's something that your AP Lang teacher has told you to do before, if that's like it might be an abbreviation that I'm just unfamiliar with. Just do what you've been kind of taught to do what has been high scoring, and then you should keep going with that. Oh, I understand. Like a line of reasoning. Assertion, example, explanation, significance. Yeah, I think that's probably a good system to go by. I think in general, no, Ida, it will close. So you can't type your response in that 5-minute upload period. I'd say that I think Miss Stephanie Kirk in her cram sessions, if y'all have been there, has talked about line of reasoning. I haven't exactly, like, I'm not updated on the loop with what she exactly has been teaching. But I think it's really important that you do include like Toulmin's model or like some degree of a line of reasoning. So Ida, what a line of reasoning is, and it's something that they've kind of emphasized this year. I think of it a way as to organize your argument. So having a claim, having evidence, having the reason why that evidence is important, why it links to your thesis, why it matters, things like that. So a line of reasoning is just how your argument kind of flows. You include your line of reasoning throughout the essay. It starts with the thesis, which is kind of your central claim. You go into I think each body paragraph is like the line of reasoning. So Perla, you are analyzing the author's line of reasoning, but in your individual rhetorical analysis paragraphs, you need to develop a line of reasoning to make your argument logical. Because remember, like, I'm calling it an argument, even though it's not the argument essay, but you are justifying your argument for why the author had X purpose and how these rhetorical devices lend themselves to that purpose. So you are still developing that line of reasoning at the end of the day, but you're also analyzing their line of reasoning, which is pretty ironic. Okay. If there are no further questions, Perla said, geez, Louise, there are so many aspects to this essay. That's okay. I think it's simple if you just kind of regard it as simple when you walk into when you start doing your practice and stuff. Okay, cool. So we're going to go into some practice here. Chrome tab. Nearpod. Yeah. Get them so confused with A-push. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, cool. So I guess we'll get into it. So this is our first prompt. I know it's small, but it won't pop up, but there will be a link in this next prompt here. And then you can just copy paste that into another tab. And so, yeah, you have 10 minutes to outline this prompt. I think we're only going to do 2 today. Rohan, if that's the case, I'm sorry, I didn't anticipate that. Just outline it again. Or you can wait until the second or third one, or wait until the second one. And that's kind of what happens when College Board releases 2008 through 2018. You kind of run out of content. All right, I'm going to be quiet a little bit. And yeah, y'all can just go ahead and answer in that box. It should force you to submit at the 10-minute mark, and we'll go through some responses. So, ciao. All right, we got quite a few responses here. I'm glad that y'all are participating. Appreciate it. It's low-key tough. That's okay. That's what we're here for. You can do the hard stuff here with Fiveable. Then you can do the stuff on College Board with no doubt in your mind. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it won't necessarily be as difficult as it was if you hadn't practiced with us. That's the whole goal here, just to make you a little bit more confident in your writing. I know that timer is pretty scary, but it's just a good idea to spend the majority of your time not outlining. So that's why I thought 10 minutes should be enough. And for those of you who can't speak, for those of you who weren't able to finish, that's okay. It's just a simulation. Alrighty. Let's look at this answer first. Oh, it shares people's responses. That's super cool. Let's just look at it here. Okay. So the thesis here, Friedman develops his argument by using strong diction, using rhetorical questions, and comparing America to other nations. Author's purpose, to urge America to have a shift in attitude and value towards academic achievement. Rhetorical questions make the reader fully think about Friedman's argument. Using strong diction makes Friedman's claim more compelling because it shows the effects of how nerds are treated. So I think Just off this outline alone, there's a little, yes, I'm going to go through all of these and give you all feedback. So we're going to do 2 prompts today. It's going to be like 30 seconds of feedback per person because I don't want to spend too long on every single one. So I would say that the thing that needs to be kind of like worked on, I guess, for whoever the student is that developing their argument is not enough when, if I remember correctly, let me look at the prompt. I think it might be fine, but I think what you need to talk about is what their argument is. So they develop their argument of X, Y, and Z and then they use this, and this device. Yeah, so it talks about how it does say analyze how Friedman develops his argument, but I think that means you need to explicitly say what his argument is and how he developed it. So because you have to analyze, you have to explain the what and the how. I don't necessarily know if this would get the thesis point, but let's keep going. I think that's a pretty accurate author's purpose, at least from what I read. So good job there. Because at the end here, you see that they talk about how, professional ball players are paid better than university students. Very few countries were like the United States, which are anti-intellectual, which is interesting. Okay, next one. In his essay, America Needs Its Nerds, Friedman, shocked by the belittling and harassment of geeks and great vocabulary, implores, it's misspelled, but I think it's okay, Americans to stop ostracizing smart and intellectual people. I think that's pretty good. I think something that I always used to add in my theses is I would always include the audience. Oh, wait, you do. Implores Americans. Sorry. But I'd always talk about the tone, too. In his essay, Friedman, shocked by that, implores Americans to stop Ooh, I just noticed something. So I know that this is the rhetorical situation here. Let's see. Rhetorical questions, colloquial tone, anecdotes, good stuff. If this is your thesis statement, what I think you do need to improve, I think you definitely need to talk about how they use rhetorical strategies to develop their argument. And so I think that's it's a little missing here. I don't know if it's necessary in this instance, but that's what I would add. I would say Friedman, shocked by blah, 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 uses a multitude of literary devices, including this and this, or just saying uses literary devices in order to implore Americans to stop ostracizing smart intellectual people. Good response. I'm doing a really bad job with 30 seconds, so I'm actually going to start a stopwatch. We're going to do like 45 seconds per. Okay, for this one, in order to explain to Americans why American society needs to embrace intellectualism, Friedman proves that society incorrectly praises athletes and socialites while shunning intellectuals, and warns Americans that the United States cannot remain as a world superpower without nerds and geeks. Once again, in this instance, I would probably mention rhetorical devices. It's only to your benefit. And I know some of y'all have streams coming up. Like I should probably be at that bio stream next, but that's okay. You can watch the replay and go off and go to another stream. That's okay. All right, this looks pretty good. I would just add, once again, I would kind of bring up rhetorical devices just because it's probably to your benefit. We're going to wrap up this stream with just this one because I don't want to keep y'all over. I know that there are some other streams that are going on right now. I know that Bio and Gov were both supposed to start. So I'm going to wrap this up really quickly. Just going to go through all these responses and kind of give you some feedback. All right. So here in his novel, America Needs Its Nerds, Mexican professor and researcher Leonid Friedman argues the fact that nerds should not be stigmatized. Yep. Ultimately influencing a prejudice. This is good. Once again, I think maybe bringing up literary devices is not a bad idea, but this is good stuff, especially exemplification. Okay. Although Friedman recognizes the intrigue of anti-intellectualism, he argues that even the highest institutions in the world shame those who try to learn, uses rhetorical devices to emphasize the time that has passed to address this issue, gives a clear image to the reader. This is good. I would give this a thesis point. Good stuff with the short sentences, rhetorical questions, and comparison. This is the kind of stuff you want to do on the AP exam. Great job, guys. Leonid Friedman writes about how nerds should be strong authoritative language. Good job with the purposes there, and good job with the exigence and things like that. By comparing derogatory terms to examples using good stuff here. Leonid Friedman attempts to convince his audience to proudly prioritize academic achievement over other skills. Good job. Sorry, I know this feedback is like very rapid. If you have any questions, just let me know after I get through some of these. Okay. He backs up this claim by doing the following. First, he appeals to authority. Second, okay, I think you... Okay, this is like a 2-sentence thesis. It's good stuff. I would say... okay, so remember with rhetorical devices, you're not as much talking about the... like, you're not summarizing the argument. You're talking more about the rhetorical devices that contributes to the author's purpose. So I think some of you are kind of edging into the territory of summary. And in this instance, remember, we want analysis, not summary. Okay, let's keep going. Ooh, we got a lovely aspects here. I like this. Chunks. Ooh, didn't finish. That's okay. I really like this kind of strategy here. Aspects, notes, good stuff with the line stuff, line citations. I really appreciate that. Okay. Friedman writes this passage to make Americans understand that people that study hard should be praised more. The American culture is focused on I think this might be antithesis and aggrieved diction. Friedman creates a call to action to make a change in the culture of America. I think whoever who wrote this, I would just add what change, what change in the culture is happening. And I see a few other streamers are going live, so if you'll have to go, that's okay. That's okay. Adios. Okay, Friedman calls people to change their attitudes towards smart people in studying by warning them that it will negatively reflect on society, emphasizes that the current moral values will only inhibit America's success and connects with the audience. This is really good thesis. Very good prose. I see metaphors, rhetorical questions. Good job. Uses academic allusions, emotional appeals, and patriotic word choice. Good job with the adjectives in order to argue. Okay, so here, I once again, I think this is almost getting into the territory of where you're summarizing their argument. What we're talking about is how it helps them achieve their purpose, not what they are trying, not their argument. So it's like maybe instead of saying argue that, something like convince the audience of X, Y, and Z that. So there is a distinct difference if y'all kind of get what I'm saying. Let's keep going. All right, this was a good start here. In order to convince the audience to see, that's what we need. Convince the audience that intelligence is necessary to America's future. He asks questions, et cetera, et cetera. Uses powerful diction and ethos and rhetorical questions. Here, by the way, I would use comma, and to become more relatable to his audience and tries to explain the importance of nerds in society. Okay. Once again, I think this relate to the audience part would get you the thesis point. Friedman persuades his readers that nerds and geeks must stop being ashamed of who they are. To do so, he condemns American society and contrasts nerds and geeks with their social counterparts. Good stuff with what their ultimate purpose was. And yeah, nice job. Okay. Effectively support her argument. So once again, I think you'd have to go in a little bit more depth as to what her argument is, but I think this was an outline, so it's okay that you don't have a complete thesis, but just make sure that you are including information about, the purpose, the message, tone, things like that. Lots and lots. Salt, I like it. Or I think that's salt. Oh, it's SPAC, SPAC. By pointing out the egregious habits taking place in the U.S. and emphasizing the larger issue for the problem. Friedman calls to action. See, I love these verbs. Calls to action, convinces, that kind of stuff indicates that it's rhetorical analysis and not a summary of their argument. I literally couldn't. Sorry. This is a good mood. I really vibe with this. I feel that. I mean, we had a stream go down. I had the wrong link today. That's okay. We recovered just like we are going to before May. And last one here, Friedman develops his argument by using strong diction, using rhetorical questions, and comparing America to other nations. Okay, so what I would do is I would include this author's purpose here in the thesis. But other than that, that's it. So that's actually going to be it for today because I just don't want to run over until like 7 or 8:30 Eastern. And so, yeah, are there any further questions before I just end it here? No, thank you. I am okay. I'm glad I could be helpful. Once again, go down to the slides below if you want to do some more practice. Check out what you missed if you came in late. Thanks, everybody, for dealing with all the technical difficulties. I'm so sorry about everything that's gone on. But yeah, I'll see you later.